just over the past year alone, since January of 2021, the very first day of January 2021, the United States of America finally, for the very first time in history, passed legislation that will ban the formation of anonymous shell companies in the United States. This was passed over President Trump's veto. Unfortunately, he could have been the president to ban anonymous shell companies, and he elected not to. But again, when we're talking about American shell companies, this is the bedrock of American financial secrecy and, as I write about, American kleptocracy. And finally, Congress passed legislation to ban that. Now, we'll see what the actual language of that is. They're still working out the details. They're still working out the kinks. Obviously, we're going to be looking for especially exemptions in this space, whether it pertains to the number of employees, whether it pertains to how easily these companies are set up, who's actually going to be monitoring this, who's going to be checking, because, again, we know, Tatiana, as you mentioned, we have issues of enforcement. But that simple fact alone, that finally Congress took the very basic step of banning anonymous shell companies, was huge. That was followed, obviously, by the Biden administration coming in. A few months later, the Biden administration elevated corruption, especially international corruption, transnational corruption, to a national security threat, formally elevating it, formally placing it on par with things like nuclear weapons and terrorism. Fast forward a few months after that, the Biden administration, actually it was just a few months ago, revealed, or I should say published for the very first time, the United States of America's very first anti-corruption strategy. Now, this didn't get a lot of play, right? I mean, the news is dominated by so many other things, not least of which is COVID and the economy. But this was really a watershed document that I do want to pause on for a moment, because this is a 38-page document that even took those of us working in the broader kind of anti-corruption space, counter-kleptocracy space, really by surprise by how full-throated and detailed it was. It didn't hesitate to call out American industries. It didn't hesitate to call out the United States of America itself as one of, if not the key actors, allowing and incentivizing and encouraging modern international corruption. It didn't hesitate to specifically identify American industries, real estate, art and auction houses, private equity, luxury goods. I have one of these quotes here from the report itself. This is the White House talking about specific American industries, specific American professionals who are, quote, often sought by criminal organizations to facilitate their illicit activities. I mean, this is casting quite the aspersions on a whole range of American enabling professionals. Again, these are the real estate agents, lawyers, accountants, escrow agents, private equity managers, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you had Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen come out and say that there's a good argument, quote, that the United States is now the best place to hide and launder ill-gotten gains. I mean, it's really remarkable. And I know one of the commenters just mentioned this is all taking place under a president who is from the state of Delaware. I don't want to defend any of his record, any of President Biden's record as it pertains to his 36 years in the Senate. We still have all kinds of questions about his role in entrenching Delaware's positioning in this. But the fact that it's the president from Delaware who's doing this, the analogy was that it was President Nixon going to China. It took a specific kind of figure in order to bridge that gap and begin implementing those kinds of policies themselves. So to make a long story short, again, these are the kinds of developments we've seen just in the last 12 months. We have all kinds of questions about enforcement, about funding, and about follow through, and then beyond that, exemptions, because we know how the story went 20 years ago. But the fact that we're now here, anonymous shell companies are banned, the president is elevating national corruption to a national security threat, and then specifically identifying the kinds of policies, loopholes, and industries that are required to change moving forward is really a remarkable thing, and it's been a remarkable run just in the last year alone.